Okay, and now I start with Pietro da Cortona, the great Baroque architect. The great Baroque architect, so many students in architecture unfortunately do not know of, and it might be that not just students of architecture, but also architects. Anyway, Pietro da Cortona, he was born today uh, at the end of the 16th century. This is the man, self-portrait. He was both a painter and an architect. He painted a lot and he painted brilliantly, and he also built brilliantly. And he built less than Bramante and Borromini and than Bernini and Borromini, but the quality of his architectural work is also remarkable. So Pietro da Cortona, you see, born on November 1st in 1596, was an Italian Baroque painter and architect, along with his contemporaries and rivals. Now, to have such rivals is something in itself. And rivals Gian Lorenzo Bernini and Francesco Borromini, he was one of the key figures in the emergence of the Roman Baroque architecture. He was also an important designer of interior decorations, and he was also a great painter. He was born Pietro Berrettini, but is primarily known by the name of his native town of Cortona in Tuscany. He worked mainly in Rome and Florence. He is best known for his frescoed ceilings, such as the vault of the Salone or main salon of the Palazzo Barberini in Rome, and carried out extensive painting and decorative schemes for the Medici family in Florence and for the Oratorian fathers of the Church of Santa Maria in Vallicella in Rome. He also painted numerous canvases. Only a limited number of his architectural projects were built, but nonetheless they are as distinctive, as inventive as those of his rivals. This is an engraving of him. Well, these engravings are not always true to nature. Some of them happened many years after their death, but I thought of showing it too. Now we'll look at some drawings of Pietro da Cortona or Pietro Berrettini. Beautiful drawings. I mean, here, really, I love the present. I love contemporary architecture. I admire some of the most, accomplished contemporary architects today. But to be honest with you, I regret that very few architects today can draw like this. You know, if you look at the drawings of Frank Gehry or Wolf Prix, you realize that we live at a time that is really disjuncted, or it is really on the verge of a big crisis, because we arrive at almost cynical, doodles. I myself, I advocate, an architecture that is born from, scribbles and doodles. Something happened to our world. It really did. This kind of drawing, no one would do today, unless maybe a dreamer at the edge of society, living in total obscurity. The drawings of those masters, where they still believed in human beings, in human life. Yes, life was difficult then as well. I'm not trying to paint a pink image of what happened then in terms of the difficulties of life, but it was a different conception of art. It was a different understanding of the role of the artist and the architect. There was a certain idealism still, and it was also the connection with faith, with religion, which, because many of the themes that these artists addressed were derived from the Bible. In the case of these artists in Italy. The drawings are, as someone would say, impeccable. I mean, these are drawings which show great skill and sensitivity. And today, I don't think even those who could draw like this would not draw like this. I mean, could you compare this kind of art with, let's say, Andy Warhol? You know, I don't think it's possible. I'm not trying to say no, not at all, because I saw an exhibition of Basquiat that I laughed at the Louis Vuitton Fondation in Paris 2 years ago. So I love the art of the present, but something happened to our world that now we cannot any longer draw. Even if we could, we wouldn't do it because it doesn't seem appropriate for our time for some reason, Yes, we have photographs now, we have digital photography, we have all kinds of means to reproducing reality. Maybe this is one of the reasons why we don't draw any longer like this. But if it is true that artists found inspiration in nature, well, I don't think that is true any longer. I don't think artists today or architects study nature so much any longer. Anyway, maybe I'm nostalgic. Maybe I'm just seduced by the timeless beauty of these drawings. Goethe, the great German poet, said that we only see what we draw. And, it seems these people saw a lot because they drew a lot. Okay. If I compare the drawings of Pietro da Cortona with the drawings of Bernini, I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. I mean, Bernini is better known, but Pietro da Cortona is Pietro da Cortona, and he deserves our attention. And also, I envy them for being both artists and architects. It's and equally accomplished in art and in architecture. And actually, architecture was and is part of art, but maybe not so much today. But at that time, it was. That's why all the architects of significance then, maybe with the exception, at least to an extent, of Palladio, they were all artists. Bernini was, Michelangelo was, Raphael was, all right. Pietro da Cortona was, and everybody, they were either sculptors, painters, they practiced art. So they were immersed in, if I am to express myself in unacceptable ways, I would say in the business of art, totally immersed. He was a Baroque architect and a Baroque painter, and there is this tumultuousness and this almost voluptuous tumultuousness. But I also think the Baroque that Pietro da Cortona represented is not overwhelming. It is representing the vortex of life, but there is still a sense of seriousness and legitimacy in a way. So it's not a fantasy world. No, it's very real what he paints and what he draws. We saw this one. Paintings, because he also painted a lot. I mean, just the ceilings that he covered with his incredible talent, would have made him deserve a role, a position, a very important position in the pantheon of art and artists. He also painted canvases, but he also painted walls or ceilings. So he was indeed a very accomplished and busy painter. maybe that's why he is not so well known by architects, because although he built, very important architecture in Rome, and you are going to see it, but because he had this dual nature, well, Bernini had it too, and Raphael maybe even more. Raphael was also an architect. Well, we don't have too much of his architecture in the present. Anyway, so just imagine painting like something like this. It's not an easy task at all. But we don't use any longer, or very, very rarely we use painting to adorn the walls or the ceilings of our buildings. Le Corbusier tried a little bit sporadically, but this kind of collective vision, which only a shared symbolic order could sustain, the kind of religion provided, we don't have any longer, really. It moves me to know that a man who painted what you see was also an architect. You can only imagine that his sensitivity displayed in the artworks, was also shown and present in his buildings. And I wonder what architects today would do something like this. Of course, there are some architects who still paint, but if we are to compare, the neurotical paintings of the present with these artworks, we realize that, from the, 17th century when he painted, to our time, a lot of changes occurred. Because we don't believe any longer in figuration, we don't believe any longer in the suggestions coming from the scriptures. We don't believe any longer in mythology. We don't believe any longer in ourselves. That's why we talk about the post-Anthropocene world, meaning the post-human world. I mean, there were dragons in his time too, metaphorical dragons, and he painted them, but he painted them because of the message he received from the scripture. Who is the scripture today, and who thinks of connecting his or her art with the message of the Bible, in the case of the Christian, art? Anyway, maybe we have other virtues. We can do other things, but not what Pietro da Cortona did and his contemporaries, or those who preceded him. I mean, why are our ceilings so untelling? Because our ceilings are so banal. I am not only talking about the flat, white, generally ceilings of our rooms and our apartments, but even in public buildings, we don't look upwards any longer. And maybe this is because we don't live under the sky, as Heidegger would say. We now fly, we take the plane, we go from here to there. So we don't actually live any longer under the sky. Maybe that's why we don't do something like this any longer. He painted so much, I don't know when he found the time to also build, and will arrive at his buildings. Now, just contemplating one painting, and we realize we are in front of a great master, and the great master is one who doesn't outline the figures. You can, there is no thick line outlining, the bodies that you see here. It's not a decorative art, it's a real painting. So there is that breathing between the body and the background and what is around them. They are in space, they are real, they are not decorative, they are not decorations. And imagine, many of the paintings, the glorious paintings that this painter did, and not just him, of course, were done very far away from, I mean, yes, you could have seen them from the floor, but the ceiling of the church was so high that, you couldn't see in detail what was happening there. And why do you think they did them? It was for the glory of God. That's what it was. It was not for the tourists, really, for the human viewers. It was all an attempt to have a dialogue with the above. Not through the easel paintings or the canvases, but the ceilings of the churches. Here you see them, like this one. All this glorious work was actually mainly done as a form of honoring the sky, the heavens, and through them, God himself. Some buildings now by Pietro da Cortona. Again, he was born at the end of the 16th century, but he lived in the 17th century. Between him and Heinrich Tessenov, although there is this coincidence that one was born on the same day when the other one died, the 1st of November, there is a distance of almost 300 years between them. Now, this is a church that is in Rome, and that he designed mainly the urban configuration and the main facade of the building, which I think he did brilliantly, because it's a very narrow street that leads to the building, and the building comes towards you and is this play with convexity and concavity, and it's baroque, but it's also, it's not overwhelming. It has a sense of equilibrium, and if you visit it, you can sit on a chair. When I was there, like 1 or 2 years ago, no, 2 years ago, with some students from the university here, we sat on some chairs. They began to draw. There is I hope I have here in this presentation a view of the urban condition, the site plan, so you can understand what I'm talking about. Santa Maria della Pace is a very important church in Rome, and I don't know what this is now. This is not it. Sorry, I'll probably come back to this. Something happened here. Sorry. I prepared this presentation for 2 years ago, and I didn't look through it now. And now I'm a little bit surprised, because I don't understand what is this. I think this is another work by him. We'll come back to the building that I was talking about later, I think. I think he worked on this facade too, but it's a lesser known building. Yeah, so we are back to the well-known church. Although he didn't design the whole building, it's just the front of it. But it's where mainly the brilliance of the building is, and I hope I have the site plan. Okay, so you see here Pietro Berrettino, Pietro da Cortona is present on the facade of a building around there. Anyway. Now I regret a little bit that I didn't look, because I could have organized this material a little better, and I apologize. But I hope, you know, I'll still make some sense of what you see here. So this is a book published on him. There are books on him. This is not the only one, but this one was, you know, attracted my attention. Again, the same church, and you see the, you know, the concavity here and the convexity here, and the convex curve and the concave curve. They create this dynamic front for the church. Now, what is here? I do not know. Sorry, some slides are not where they are supposed to be. We are back to it. Again, what made these architects to work on these so-called details in such a way at that time? We wouldn't do it. We are in such a hurry, you know, to cover the earth with all kinds of buildings that we don't pay attention to, you know, the corner of the building, to the culmination of a column attached or otherwise at the top. There are so many things that we are not paying attention to any longer in our rush, truly in our incredible rush to cover the earth. And it's, I think, problematic. One of the very few contemporary or modern architects who paid attention to such matters was Carlos Scarpa, but he died in 1978 or 1976. So almost half a century ago. Anyway, this is another church by Pietro da Cortona. Again, I think he worked only for the front elevation, but I still hope I have it would be unfair to not have the site plan for this church. No, I'm unhappy with this presentation. I really should have looked through it, and I apologize because I see these slides, these images are not orderly placed. And maybe at the time when I prepared this material, I was in a great rush myself because I just mentioned the rush, and it's possible that that's how I made the presentation at that time. But I'm not happy with it now, and I'm a little embarrassed, and I ask for forgiveness. Maybe tomorrow I should talk again about Pietro da Cortona after I order this presentation, because they are you know, the images are intertwined in a confusing way. I go from one work to the other. But we are back to Santa Maria della Pace, and you see the incredible complexities and intricacies at the corner, you know, that it shows skill and it shows sensitivity and the care that we don't have any longer. Now, the Basilica of Santi Ambrogio e Carlo Corso, here we can admire the interior of the dome, a fine late work by Pietro da Cortona from 1668. So he was 73 years old, I think, or I don't know, 69 years old, I forgot. He was born in 1599 or 1597. Anyway, he was close to being 70, and the church was not built by him, but he did the interior of the dome. And you know, at that age, not too many people would do something like this, but he did. And look what a church this is. You know, it's quite dramatic and majestic. So his work was done here. Everything else was done by other architects and artists, and I do not know their names. But Rome has, and not just Rome, there are many cities in Italy have incredible jewels and incredible churches that you know, would require a lifetime to be able to become aware of. because you saw the exterior is almost in a different spirit. The interior is where the Baroque exuberance is at play. And here, what is a Google map of, some of these works. Anyway, now, it's also true, they spent their energies and their talent to work for churches, mostly, if not exclusively. We do other things, we do airports, we do schools, we do apartment buildings. So it's a changed world. It's true. It's also the population of our world is much, much larger compared to the population of their world. But I still think we could, it's also a question of priorities, Of course, they had houses then too, and even apartment buildings. But the main concern of art was to serve religion. And initially, from what I read, the oldest definition of art that I found in Sanskrit was art equals bridge equals God. Art was a way of worshiping, and it was a way of honoring the divinity, the gods, the god, the whatever you believed in. We don't have that any longer, really, because man, the human being, emancipated himself and herself from what before was inconceivable to emancipate yourself from, meaning, the above or the beyond, the divine, the sacred. I mean, these artists and architects worked for the sacred, worked for the divine, worked for the beyond, wherever that beyond was. At that time, they didn't think of going to Mars or to going to the moon like we do today. But in their own way, this was a way to, kind of not to escape, but to envision an alternate reality in a way. And a lot of effort was put into it, as you can see. But since this is about Pietro da Cortona, this was his work in this ample space of this church, which you can see here in the, the silhouette of the dome and the skyline of Rome. Another church of Santi Luca e Martina from 1635 to 1665. So he worked for 30 years for this church. Again, I think he worked with other people. He didn't do it alone. It's possible that he did most of the work for the front elevation, just as he did the Santa Maria della Pace. It's different, I think, there, and that's why I don't understand why I don't have, it's possible I have another presentation. I have 6 PowerPoint presentation or 6 alternatives for Pietro da Cortona. I chose, usually the last one is the most complete, but maybe I chose for today the wrong one. I don't understand. I should have had, at least for that very important church, a site plan, because I remember searching for a site plan, but I don't see yet. Maybe it will still show up. Sorry. Anyway, now one could also get tired a little bit of Baroque art. I remember that Wolf Prix published a book called Rollover or Rock, Rollover Rock and Roll, Rollover Baroque, in some kind of a paraphrasing of rollover Beethoven in music. And he also said the same thing about Palladio, you know, to rock over or roll over Palladio, rock over or roll over Baroque. It's a reaction to an excessive, being excessively overwhelmed, but by a form of art which doesn't allow you to be yourself, so to speak. But I think this is a juvenile reaction, because I think, although I do understand, I don't know, I forgot the name of the artist who sang roll over or rock over, roll over Beethoven. Usually you do something like this when you want to compete with the one you want to, dismiss, but you want to dismiss out of admiration, not out of true hatred, I think. Santa Maria della Pace. I think now I arrive at, I think what you saw earlier was a more preparatory, but a little bit disorganized, and I apologize, preparation for what was going to come. And that is a more orderly presentation of his works, or at least this work, which is his main accomplishment in architecture, Santa Maria della Pace. So he worked from 1656 to 1667 for 10 years. You already are familiar with this image. Yes, that's what I was praying that I will arrive at, because I think the urban conditions are very, very important. You know, he brilliantly, it reminds me a little bit of the gesture that Michelangelo did in Biblioteca Laurenziana, where he came with his, stairs, towards the one who entered that magnificent vestibule. And here you see the building coming towards you. It's a courageous, I think, decision Pietro da Cortona took. And I think it works very well. It's a narrow building, considering, this part of the facade is rather narrow, but it's brilliantly proportioned. And its assertion, its curved assertion, both welcomes you and makes you attentive of the building you're actually entering. I think here he was not just an architect, but also an urbanist. He handled very well the urban conditions, and in an unconventional way. Well, this is a later graphic representation of this building, a section, a longitudinal section. Here you see again the tension, the conditions of the urban context. Very particular for this building. Because there is this tension between expansion and contraction. And the Baroque art in general manipulated the two tendencies simultaneously, and that's why there is tension. There is the Baroque is a dynamic form of art and a dynamic form of architecture. That's why, in a way, I don't quite understand the title of the book I mentioned, published in Vienna by, at least he was involved in the publication, Roll of Baroque, or the Baroque, because the Baroque is already rolling, and rocking. It's already a turbulent form of art because of its contradictions, built-in contradictions and tensions. It's a dynamic form of art. So it's not one that needs to be resuscitated from its placidity, not at all. I mean, you can see here, there is placidity here in this building, there is placidity here, but not here. Here it is a dynamic architecture. And I think Pietro da Cortona did something brilliantly. It's an architectural jewel. Yes, Rome has other jewels, no doubt, but this is one of them. And it is by this great artist and architect, Pietro da Cortona, with a very nice name, I would say. I mean, even Pietro Barberini would have been very nice, but somehow Pietro da Cortona sounds even better. Do you see the two curves that oppose each other, this one and this one? This is, if you play with the concave and the convex at the same time simultaneously, you are already making some steps within the Baroque field of action. Santa Maria in Via Lata, another building by him. This one makes me think a little bit, at least this part of the facade, a little bit, but not the two levels, rather, duplicating themselves. The top part made me think a little bit of Alberti. And Alberti lived almost 200 years earlier. This is also an interesting building, but perhaps a little bit less convincing than Santa Maria della Pace. But it is interesting because of this duality. This doubleness, for me at least, does create a certain confusion. I mean, if you eliminate the first part, the bottom part, you get one building. If you eliminate the second half, the one above, you get another building. But somehow the two together, I don't know, it's an unusual building in this sense. But the interior is impressive, with these, giant columns, very tall as you saw them. And, I mean, I don't know. I mean, here, and I don't also know if Pietro da Cortona was really involved. Just as in Mantua, Sant'Andrea in Mantua by Alberti, there was a lot of decoration and a lot of ornamentation. Now you could say, wait a minute, didn't you advocate the cause of the ornament showing that little building in New York City done by the Dutch firm? Yes, I did. And I do think that the ornament is having an intense coming back now. But here, I mean, I would also understand the reaction towards excessive ornamentation. Like here, I don't think there is a balance between structure and ornament. Here, the ornament takes over. And when it takes over, it could be tiring, I think. Anyway, but I don't think this was the work of Pietro da Cortona. Cappella di San Francesco Severio, Chiesa del Gesù, Jesus. Although I see the same kind of columns, I don't know. I don't know if they belong to his work or not. Gavotti Chapel in San Nicola da Tolentino. I don't know if I have great pictures here. It's just a chapel, just this. Again, most of these works were done in conjunction with other artists and architects. So he only, only certain parts of the buildings that I mentioned were identified as being done by him. with with surety, with being sure of it. You see, this is what we look at is this. We have various artists working together, but unified by what? What brought them together? It was the unifying, power or prowess of religion. They knew what they had to communicate because they knew the scripture. And then the differences between them were not huge. So religion had a unifying role in this. You had diversity, you had multiplicity, but you also had unity because it was anchored, was deriving from faith. And we don't have something like this today. We are free, but we are also, I think, very disoriented. Yes, we are free, but maybe the philosopher was right. We are free, but sterile to an extent. Now you'll see a very special kind of work. He did also tabule anatomice. These are dissections of human bodies done for an anatomical treatise, they have a didactic purpose, but they are done by a great artist. And so I think it's a brilliant work, in a way very modern. I mean, for my sensibility, this is, beyond the questions of, didacticism. I think they show some kind of strange meeting, kind of like in the drawings of Leonardo, but in the case of Leonardo, there isn't really a pathos of dramatic. I mean, there isn't a drama, a theatrical drama. Here it is. And so, I mean, look at this, it's look at the posture, look at the, it's a skeleton, but there is also, there are, fragments of a skin, and then there is a mirror that shows, and then the head, explodes from the mirror, almost breaking the mirror from within and coming outwardly. This is almost an expressionist drawing, and it was done in the 17th century. And it was done for didactic purposes, but it's also artistically telling, if not more than just telling. Or look here, no skeleton would have such a posturing. This is the posturing of a body that is alive. But what we see here is not. It's almost like a skeleton that it is alive, a skeleton full of life, a vivacious skeleton. These drawings and these plates, I don't know if he carved them themselves in the steel plates, but the drawings were done by Pietro da Cortona, the very painter whose paintings we saw, the very, religious painter and architect. I mean, he worked for the church, but here he is not working for the church. He is in a way working against the church. This is a work done for scientific purposes. Or look at this one. Also, this is almost surrealistic. Look at the posture of the bones of the limbs and the legs. I mean, no skeleton would fancy itself in this way. It's actually to use a word that Yahoo News uses all the time. The skeleton is sporting, provocative, posture here. It's almost like a skeleton that is a dandy, a dandy skeleton. I don't know. I'm just improvising, but I am amused and perplexed even to an extent by what Pietro da Cortona did in the 17th century. Or look at this, I wonder if the church saw these plates, because if the church saw these plates, they probably could have excommunicated him, or I don't know, they could have even sent him to the Inquisition, or even to the guillotine, because this is certainly not this is not the work of someone who lived under the sky. No. I find them very provocative and almost modern in their unconventionalness, because of the way he combined, artistic expression with didactic accuracy, and, uniting in the same picture the skeleton with what normally is outside of the skeleton, So these dissections are, very modern, actually, I think. Look at this one, it's incredible, Again, the same painter who painted the paintings that we saw. Is that it? Yes, I think I ended. Sorry for the abrupt ending. I was myself taken by surprise. Yes, we had 195 pictures, and just to contemplate again the last one, this one. This was the last picture of this presentation. Sorry for the a little bit less fluid presentation today, at least for Pietro da Cortona, but I think we still saw something, relating to the complex work of this very interesting artist.